You know, if there's one question I get asked more than any other, more even than in the Battle of the Ryans, are you Team Reynolds or Team Gosling? That question would have to be, Mark, are the Nikon N65 and the Tamron 28-200 the peaches and cream pairing of budget film photography, or do they clash like a toothpaste and orange cocktail? Well, today, we're going to try and answer that question. We're in the cheap seats of the camera world today, slumming it with the faded dreams of film photography made manifest in brittle plastic. We've seen the fall and rise of compact point-and-shoots and the even more inexplicable tenacity of toy cameras clinging to our creative aspirations and turning them into soft, blurry fugue states. But what if I said you could get something that was easier to use, more reliable, better image quality, and infinitely more versatile than any Gen Z fashion accessory? Because if you're going to be in the cheap seats of the arena, this combination with its 28-200 lens is going to be a lot more likely to capture the detail of that Taylor Swift concert than your Holger. Here's my predicament. I travel quite a bit for work, and try as I might, I have never been able to fit my whole camera collection into my suitcase. Faced with the inescapable conclusion that sometimes you can only take one camera and one lens, and in the lightest combination that you can haul around the departure hall, I have had to modify my packing style because there just wasn't enough room for my cameras once I'd packed my toothbrush, passport, and pet iguana. And if we have to look for a light, cheap combination, I do think this fits the bill. Both of these devices can be found in the dusty garages of eBay sellers at very reasonable prices. The Nikon N65 is an unloved camera from an unloved era of film photography. It's cheap, and yes, it's plastic and definitely not pitched at the professionals. The same can be said for the Tamron 28-200 f3.8 to 5.6 macro AF spherical XR-IF attached to it. At least if you can get your mouth around all of these acronyms, because by the time you've actually said the name of the lens, the video is pretty much over. In summary though, what they both have in common is that they came at the end of the film era, before the exacting resolution of digital sensors required high resolving glass, but at the same time when camera manufacturers had pretty much perfected film photography and managed to turn it into a cheap commodity. So even your grandmother could shoot with an SLR. But how good is it really? Well, let's lean into lived experience to answer that, since I took it with me on my last trip to Tokyo, Japan. First stop on a Sunday weekend morning, the camera shop district of West Shinjuku. So let's talk a bit about the Nikon N65, or as it's also known, F75, or just U.
Who, me? No.
No Ryan, not you.
Ryan Gosling. It's locked in. It's going to be Ryan Gosling.
And not the other Ryan either, the Nikon U. You can't go to Nikon U to study photography, but you can buy your own Nikon U for a lot less than the cost of an undergraduate degree. As I said, you'll find them down the cheaper end of the auction site listings, often from Japan, condition mint plus, beautiful appearance, just normal scuffs from being dragged along the bitumen behind a truck. So what do you get for your money? Well, quite a lot it seems. I'll let the spec sheet from the manual glide by like the small print of an OpenAI data harvesting license agreement. Unlike Amazon, this doesn't indemnify themselves in the event of a zombie apocalypse, or like GameStation, claiming ownership of your immortal soul. The only catch with this manual is that there's an awful lot to consume. But let's start with the basics first. Like many millennial SLRs, this packs most of the features that you need and a lot that you don't. You have the standard program, shutter, aperture, and manual modes, as well as some of the more novelty modes that you see on the point and shoots of the era. In fact, it inherits a lot more of the modern features that were starting to come through at the time. 3D matrix metering, exposure compensation, shutter speeds up to 0.002 of a second, and TTL flash with matrix balanced film modes, both built in and for compatible flashes. It even has the ability to do double exposure. If you watch my previous video, you'll see that I do a lot of my own double exposure on my older cameras, always accidental and with mixed results, but it's nice that you can actually do it here deliberately. It's not a big or heavy camera either, weighing in at less than 400 grams. So why isn't it more popular? We'll get onto some of its frustrating shortcomings later, but if you want the short answer, you probably don't need to look further than that gorgeous silver plastic finish. Seriously, it looks like it's made from the same material as a tiara for a 5-year-old girl's birthday party, and probably just as durable. But hey, at least it's not champagne coloured, right? There is a black version for those sartorially self-conscious photographers, but let's be real here, you're not wearing this to impress, and I'm sure Kendall Jenner would not be seen dead sporting this around her neck. It's possibly a bit big to squeeze into your Louis Vuitton handbag. It's just not cool. So, perfect for me. One roll of film down and time to look at the second part of this budget combination, the lens. The Tamron 28-200 f3.8 to 5.6 is a lens of significance. Tamron touts itself as the progenitor of the all-in-one zoom. While the big players like Canon and Nikon were paddling around the shallow range of the focal lengths, Tamron brought out a 28-200 in 1992 that drew attention simply because it wasn't crap. I mean, it wasn't that good either, let's be honest, but they were onto something, and throughout the next decade and a half, they iterated it through multiple generations. 2006 probably saw the last of the great early classics before they started to switch up the aperture range, and that one was specifically designed to make the most of digital sensors. It's hard to imagine today, but having such a long focal range was a real challenge. While 28mm doesn't seem very wide by today's standards, you're having to manage the distortion inherent in wide-angle lenses while still trying to keep the lens sharp and free from aberration at the long end. Nikon didn't bring their own AFD lens out until 1998, and while I haven't tried it, by all accounts, it's not optically that much better, and it doesn't offer much more other than 0.2 of an f-stop brightness at the long end. It's also bigger and heavier than this, and it's not able to focus as close. Generally, the sense is that over time, the Tamrons just kept getting better and better. From large rotating front elements down to this much smaller version that lets you put on circular polarizers and is better optimized for macro. Mine is the AF, a spherical XRIF version. If you know anything about Tamron, you know that they do love their acronyms. This was made just before the digital DI version. The best part about this lens is that Tamron made them for several lens mounts, including its universal adapt-all mount, and they were widely popular, so you can find flocks of them nesting in the second-hand camera markets. There doesn't seem to be a huge difference in prices for the older and the newer ones either, though still do have your wits about you. It's definitely not a $300 lens. Being one of the newer models, this one makes up for the overly complex design by adding a couple of high refractive index and spherical elements, designated blue and purple here respectively. I don't think 15 elements in 14 groups is going to render your photographic world with unheralded 3D pop, but what you get is a generally well-corrected and sharp lens with enough contrast to give your film photos a classic but generally modern rendering. So yes, this lens marks a significant point in history, leading to the wider adoption of low-budget super zooms. Is it perfect? No. Is it acceptable though? Remember, we're talking about the perfect balance of size, cost, and quality for film travel photography here. We're not looking at toys, but we're not trying to kid ourselves out as a professional photographer. In the end, it's a question for you. It's totally subjective. I know some people who wouldn't go near zoom lenses, particularly for film cameras, and even today, sticking a super zoom on your professional mirrorless system will probably earn you the scornful glances of the other protogs at the World Expo. You may be one of those prime lens polemicists, and I'm not going to diss you for it. And if that is the case, I'm sure even you have felt the pain of missing out on details in the distance on your own travels when you've been rocking your 35mm f1.4R lens. This gives you the versatility you need for cathedrals and wildlife. If your cathedral interiors are fairly well lit and your wildlife is a stationary seagull. Like I said, it's not perfect, but let's load another roll of film and form some conclusions as to whether it's good enough. Now we're in Nakano, a few more stops from Shinjuku, and actually one of the most densely populated parts of Tokyo, and that's saying something. I was there for work, of course, but what I was really there for was to see if I could capture the cool blend of old and new, business and social on a typical work lunchtime. Should we see how close we can focus on this thing? I've never really thought too much about it. It's obviously Okay, 100 speed film is a bit low for this area. Don't do alleyways with 100 ISO film. I've just realised I have not had gyoza yet. This was what I was going to forget. But that's just a scene, isn't it? Let's take it. Let's see how the flash lit that scene. Not very well. I need the Spiderman and the ducky. I definitely need the Spidey's ass. Back into the sun. And you probably heard me muttering there about how this lens isn't good enough for ISO 100 films in dark alleyways. You should probably steer clear of dark alleyways anyway, but if you are going to be exploring the shadowy corners of Tokyo, you probably are better off with a standard f1.4 prime. But as I said before, you lose that versatility. What do you think of the image quality so far? For me, it's more than good enough. I'm not going to do a forensic comparison here with some of my newer and better zooms. I think that defeats the purpose of this video. The point is, I'm satisfied with it. As usual on this channel, you're going to get the rough with the smooth so you can make up your own mind. I definitely haven't nailed every shot so far. In fact, a couple of them, well, they have been a bit soft. That's not the lens though, in so much as it's not a result of poor optics, it's just the reality of having to hold the camera steady on the street when the lens is pushed out to 200mm. To be fair, on the Nikon N65 it does support lens stabilization through Nikon's VR, but that's more a feature of the newer AFS lenses without the aperture ring, and being later designs and generally a lot more expensive than this humble little Tamron. The trick is to just be extra careful to hold it steady when you shoot telephoto, and for most of the time that wasn't a problem, even with the 100 speed film. Kentmere 100 is a nice film, but not the lowest grain or the most resilient to halation, but it's a perfect match for this camera lens combination. Is the soft glow here a result of lens diffraction, poor focus, or hand holding, or just a quirk of the film? I don't know. Maybe a combination of all three, but that's not the point. If you want perfection, you're on a hiding to nowhere anyway with film, and what the Tamron 28-200 offers is a cheap and reliable companion for a cheap and reliable camera with cheap and reliable film. And honestly, when you do nail it, Does it matter? This image is plenty sharp enough, and while it might not be the most interesting photo in the world, I think you'd be hard-pressed to complain about the technical lens quality. It could have been taken with film equipment that costs 5 times as much and would probably have been a lot heavier. Are there alternatives to the Nikon N65 and Tamron 28-200? Obviously there are, and we will explore some of the quirks and quibbles with this pairing soon, as well as come up with a few options that might still get you there. But let's go ahead and finish off this roll first. Well, I wanted that scooter, but if I can't have him, I'll have this. I think I'm going to overexpose this one by at least half a stop. Alright, I need that reflection. Give a little bit of room to crop for that one because I think I'll probably want to straighten the lines a bit. I want that snowflake. I want that building. This is where compression works super well. Look at me. Baby, look at me. Don't look at what I'm looking at. Look at me. Now look at me and wonder, why is he taking that photograph? Why is he taking that photograph? And let's obscure him. And then... So let's circle back to the topic of this video and ask again whether this is the perfect travel budget combination. I should probably even have begun here, but let's tick off a few things that really make this an effective kit for me. Firstly, we have a good zoom range from wide angle to telephoto. It's not the most wide angle lens, but 28 is a good hard stop if you want wide, but you don't want too much distortion. 200 isn't a wildlife lens, but it's comfortably in the don't need a tripod category as long as you've got good light. So you have the versatility. You also have size and weight. This total combination comes in at less than about 750 grams, which is 26.5 ounces for those six-fingered viewers among us that still operate on base 12 in the Imperial system. That's $395 for the camera, $355 for the lens, and a lot less than more primitive cameras like this one, for example. And look, while they might compete with size, the cool cameras from the 70s and 80s, they're just way too heavy. And yes, a point and shoot might be smaller and more versatile, but while the turn of the millennium generally saw both prices and quality plummet, that was particularly true of the zoom point and shoot market, which sought to pack long lenses and lots of features into something your nana could afford and carry, with lots of compromises along the way. To be honest, cameras like these weren't that much more expensive, and you got a lot better value in terms of image quality. So if we're going to stick with later model autofilm SLRs, what's the competition? Well, the Nikon N65 came out in the year 2000, and it was a direct successor of this camera, the Nikon N60. I haven't properly featured this one on the channel yet, but I will at some point. Not a bad camera, but definitely heavier and basically crippled in comparison. It can only take autofocus lenses that use the body to drive the autofocus mechanism. It lacks the electrical contacts for lenses with built-in motors. All well and good since AFS lenses are more expensive anyway, but let's be real. If you have a Nikon digital SLR, a lot of your lenses are turned into paperweights on this. Neither of these can meter with manual lenses, but at least with the N65 it supports AFS lenses and this supports lens stabilization. The same can't be said for this, and it can't be said for this either, the Nikon F75. This is really the poor sister to the N65. It's even lighter and smaller, but it has the same issues as the F60. The N65 also has more popular siblings in the form of the F75 and the F80. Look, the F80 is definitely the best of them, followed by the N75. They're both late model cameras, each a step up in quality and each commensurately more expensive. If you can get either of these for the same price than the 65, then definitely go with either. Understand, the F80 though is probably my overall top recommendation for this category, but it's also a bit heavier because of the better build quality. Both the 75 and 80 though do solve some of the irritations that I have with this particular camera. One of the issues that I have with the N65 is its dynamic AF. It switches between single and continuous all on its own based upon perceiving movement in a scene. Fine until you're focusing on something towards the edge of the frame and then someone moves, causing it to refocus again. And it has that incredibly frustrating feature common to point and shoots where you can't override the DX coding to set the ISO of your film. You probably can get around both of these issues, but they are a little bit frustrating. Looking at the lenses, and well, okay, let's look at Nikon's own offerings first, and they look a little bit similar. Well, look, we'll start with the lens I don't have, their own 28-200mm, but everything I've seen of that is that you're paying more money for a tiny increment in quality. My recommendations would probably be something along the lines of this 28-105 or the 28-85. They're both sharp lenses and inexpensive, and while they don't have the reach of the 28-200, they probably provide a tiny bit better image quality. If you're really looking for bang for buck and don't mind a shorter lens on the telephoto end, then you actually can't go past this tiny 28-80 sitting on my N55 and the black version on my N75. It's still screw drive, so more compatible with the ones mentioned here, except for the poor crippled F60, as this lens itself doesn't have an aperture ring, and you don't have the command dial on the F60's body to change the aperture. But if you're really looking for a budget combo and don't mind the fact that it'll probably die on you because of its atrocious build quality, this is still probably the cheapest and lightest way that you can get any budget travel SLR. And it's surprisingly sharp. See here where I took that particular combo for a walk around Shanghai. But enough about the gear. In the end, does it really matter as long as you're satisfied with the image quality? Well, you tell me. I'm always trying to find good value combinations in that golden triangle of heft, price and quality, and this was my go-to combination during COVID when I was allowed out to walk the dog during lockup. No doubt there are other combinations from other manufacturers and maybe even from Nikon that I haven't mentioned. What is your go-to equivalent for Canon, Pentax, Minolta? Let's get the conversation going in the comments, and if you do like this kind of content, don't forget to like, subscribe and ring that notification bell too. You may even have a favorite photo from the Tokyo streets that I shared. Let me know if my curation skills are off kilter, but here are 6 anyway that I think managed to capture something of West Shinjuku and Nakano. No color, of course, but since we're talking about cheap film combinations, doesn't it just make sense to use a cheap black and white film like Kentmere 100? Now, I'm always going to jump on an equally cheap gag, egg slut, but where there is humor in these images, hopefully it's more of a quizzical stop and make you think vibe. Like this guy pondering the out of context Santa Claus, or this one where you have the torn billboard featuring scissors and those odd little faces drawn onto the lanterns with what looks like a Sharpie. Both Nakano and West Shinjuku had their own charm. The West Shinjuku area is quite picturesque and dominated by the large cocoon building, but I decided instead to go with something a bit less wow. To me, a lot of the character of Japan is about the busyness of the place. I nearly went with this one, but figured, hey, this is a video about a 200mm lens, so let's use that compression to our advantage and create layers of windows and billboards. This sign is another icon of the area, but probably would be less meaningful without the human element for scale. That's why I chose this image over the others, like this. Ultimately, it's the randomness of people that are the most fascinating. This is almost an archetypal image of jaunty salarymen out for lunch. And as you could see, there are a lot of human moments on these rolls. Perhaps this is the most intriguing of them. It's not wildly emotive, but it does hint at a quiet, gentle intimacy. Have I convinced you? Will you be taking a Nikon N65 and Tamron 28-200 on your next holiday, or perhaps some other later model budget film SLR alternative? Nikon isn't unique in these offerings, but I do suspect I might be unique in suggesting 25 years later that this should be your next purchase instead of that Canon EOS R5 Mark II you've been eyeing off. Let's see how the YouTube algorithm treats this one. Later.